I walked into my mother's house, the scent of rosemary and garlic thick in the air. The dining table was already set, white lace tablecloth, the same porcelain dishes we'd been using for years, and a centerpiece of fresh flowers. It looked perfect, just like every other family dinner. But I knew better. "Emily, you finally made it." My mom, Linda, greeted me with a brief hug, her eyes scanning me like she was assessing whether I was too thin again. "Of course I wouldn't miss it," I said, setting down the expensive bottle of wine I'd brought. Not that anyone would appreciate it. Jessica, my older sister, was already sitting at the table, cradling a glass of water like she was above drinking anything else. Her husband, Michael, sat beside her, nodding along as my father, Robert, listened intently to whatever mundane story he was telling. Jessica looked up at me and smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile she gave when she was about to say something backhanded. "Wow, Emily, you actually found time to come. I thought you'd be too busy selling another mansion to some rich CEO." I forced a pleasant expression. I made an exception. "Family first, right?" She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, come on, we all know work is your real family." There it was. I ignored her and sat down, reaching for the breadbasket as my mom started gushing over Jessica's kids, Olivia and Ethan. "Jessica is just incredible," Mom said, smiling proudly. "She manages everything so well. 2 kids, a husband, a household, and still finds time to volunteer at the church. It's really something." I chewed my bread slowly, waiting for the inevitable comparison. "I just don't know how she does it," my dad added, shaking his head in admiration. "Nowadays, women are so caught up in work, they forget what really matters." Jessica gave a theatrical sigh. "It's not easy, but I do it because family is the most important thing. Some people don't understand that." Michael patted her hand, beaming. "That's why you're the best mom and wife." I sipped my wine, my jaw tight. I knew exactly what was happening. Jessica had always been the golden child, the perfect wife, the devoted mother. Meanwhile, I was the ambitious, career-driven sister who apparently had her priorities mixed up. No one cared that I had built my own empire, that I had worked my way up in luxury real estate and closed deals worth more than this entire house. No one saw the sacrifices I made. To them, success only mattered if it fit their definition. I smiled politely. "I think people define success in different ways. Jessica is an amazing mom, and I'm proud of her. But I've built something too. Just in a different way." Jessica gave a condescending nod. Of course. It's just, at the end of the day, money doesn't keep you warm at night." Michael chuckled. "Yeah, Emily, when are you gonna settle down? Or are you still married to your job?" I didn't bother correcting them. I didn't tell them about David, my fiancé, who was currently finalizing a deal that would change our lives forever. I didn't mention the penthouse we were about to buy, because I knew something they didn't. And soon they were going to find out exactly what I was capable of. Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be about gratitude, about family coming together. At least that's what people like to say. In reality, it was just another stage for Jessica to perform on. The table was covered in dishes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes. Jessica had made a point of reminding everyone at least twice that she had spent all day cooking, even though I saw my mom sneak a store-bought pie into the kitchen earlier. Everything was normal. Until it wasn't. Jessica cleared her throat dramatically, looking around the table with barely contained excitement. "Michael and I have a little announcement." I took a sip of my wine, already preparing for something obnoxious. Jessica beamed. "Mom, Dad, everyone, we're going on a cruise. A 2-week luxury trip to the Caribbean." The table erupted into cheers. My mother clasped her hands together, looking thrilled. "That's amazing." Mom gushed. "A well-deserved break for the whole family." Jessica nodded. "It's going to be incredible. First-class suites, private excursions. Oh, and a day in St. Bart's. You'll love it, Mom." I frowned slightly, feeling an odd sense of distance in her words. "The whole family?" I put my glass down. "Wait. What do you mean the whole family?" Jessica waved a hand, brushing off my question. "Oh, Mom, Dad, Michael's parents, the kids." She trailed off. I stared at her. "And me." Silence. Jessica's smile froze for a second before she let out a forced little laugh. Oh, Emily, we just figured you'd be too busy with work. I mean, you're always traveling for your job, right? I felt my stomach drop. So, you didn't invite me? Mom cleared her throat uncomfortably, suddenly very focused on cutting her turkey. Jessica gave a shrug like it was no big deal. It's just, you never really seem interested in these kinds of things. And besides, she added, tilting her head, someone has to watch the kids. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? Michael the idiot actually chuckled. Well, we figure since you weren't coming, it'd be perfect. You could watch Olivia and Ethan while we're gone. A slow wave of anger rolled through me. Not only had they deliberately excluded me from a family trip, but they had the audacity to expect me to play the babysitter while they went off on a luxury vacation. Jessica reached over and squeezed my hand like she was doing me a favor. Come on, Em. It's not like you had plans anyway. I felt something crack inside me. I could have blown up right then and there. I could have called them out, told them exactly how cruel and dismissive they were. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. A slow, careful smile. The kind I used when closing a deal worth millions. You know what? I said lightly. You're right. I'll take care of the kids. Jessica looked surprised, like she'd expected me to put up a fight. Oh, that's great, she said hesitantly. See? I knew you'd understand. I nodded, sipping my wine. Inside, though, I was already planning my next move, because they thought they had one. But they had no idea what was coming. That night after dinner, I sat in my car outside my mother's house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. They didn't even invite me. They had planned a 2-week luxury vacation, talking about it in a group chat I wasn't even part of. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they expected me to stay behind like some unpaid nanny? I could have ranted. I could have confronted them, demanded an apology, forced my way into the trip. But I wasn't interested in begging for scraps. Instead, I reached for my phone and called him. Hey, babe. David answered on the second ring, his voice warm, familiar. How was dinner? I let out a breathy laugh. Oh, the usual. Jessica was praised like a saint. My career was dismissed as irrelevant, and they're all going on a luxury cruise without me. A long pause. They excluded you? Oh, not just that, I said lightly, tapping my fingers against the steering wheel. They expect me to babysit while they're gone. David was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was calm, but edged with something sharp. That's unbelievable. I know. What do you want to do? I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, a slow smile forming. I think it's time we finalize the penthouse. The next morning I met with Susan, my mentor and a powerhouse in the luxury real estate world. We sat in a private lounge at a 5-star hotel, sipping espresso as she went over the final details of the purchase. You're sure about this? She asked, arching a brow. $60 million is a statement. That's the point, I said smoothly, flipping through the paperwork. Susan smirked. And you're really taking this unit? Right across from your sister's house. I took my time answering, swirling my espresso before taking a slow sip. Yes. Because if Jessica thought she could treat me like I was invisible, she was about to learn otherwise. I signed the papers, the weight of the moment settling into my bones. The week leading up to their departure, I played my role perfectly. Jessica was so smug about her brilliant plan to leave me with the kids that she didn't notice anything unusual. Okay, here's their bedtime schedule, and they like their pancakes extra fluffy in the morning, Jessica said, handing me a ridiculously detailed list before they left for the airport. I smiled sweetly, tucking the paper into my bag without looking at it. Got it. She patted my arm like I was some hired help. See? I knew we could count on you. Oh, Jessica. You have no idea. Once they were gone, I didn't take Olivia and Ethan to my old apartment. I took them to the penthouse. The moment we stepped inside, their little jaws dropped. Aunt Emily, Olivia whispered, eyes wide as she stared at the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. Is this a castle? I grinned. It's our castle for the next 2 weeks. The penthouse was everything I had ever dreamed of. Polished marble floors, a private infinity pool on the terrace, a personal chef on call. It was luxury, and it was mine. Wait, do we get to stay here? Ethan asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Not just stay. I said, kneeling to their level. We get to live here. But it's a secret, okay? It's a surprise for your parents when they come back. They nodded eagerly, already running off to explore. I pulled out my phone and sent Jessica a text. I attached a picture, not of the penthouse, of course. No, I had planned ahead. I had taken pictures in my old apartment before we left, making sure the backgrounds looked casual, like we were just having a normal time. Jessica had no clue. I smiled to myself, watching Olivia and Ethan race toward the pool. Let the games begin. For the next few days, Olivia and Ethan lived like royalty. Morning started with fluffy pancakes, but not the kind Jessica made. These were prepared by my private chef, served on a balcony overlooking the city skyline. Afternoons were filled with adventure. VIP passes to amusement parks, exclusive museum tours, and trips to designer stores where I let them pick out whatever they wanted. Evenings, movie nights in the penthouse's private home theater, complete with gourmet popcorn and blankets so soft they practically melted in your hands. They were having the time of their lives. And the best part? Jessica had no idea. Every now and then, I'd send her a casual update. Kids are great. Just playing in the park today. Meanwhile, we were actually at a luxury indoor trampoline park. Made them mac and cheese for dinner. True, but the mac and cheese was made with black truffle and aged Parmesan, prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. Jessica never questioned anything. She was too busy posting filtered vacation photos, making sure the world knew just how perfect her trip was. But the real masterpiece? The way Olivia and Ethan were beginning to see me, and their world, differently. Halfway through the week, David joined us. When he walked into the penthouse, Olivia's eyes went huge. "Who is that?" she whispered. "That," I said, grinning, "is Uncle David." David crouched down, offering Olivia a high five and Ethan a playful fist bump. "Nice to meet you guys. Your aunt tells me you've been on some serious adventures." Ethan immediately latched onto him. "Aunt Emily took us everywhere. She's the best." I didn't miss the way Olivia was studying David, her little brain working overtime. "Wait," she said slowly. "Are you Aunt Emily's boyfriend?" David chuckled, glancing at me. "Something like that." I kneeled beside her. "Actually, Olivia, I have a little secret." She leaned in, eyes wide. "We're engaged." Her mouth dropped open. "What? Like, getting married engaged?" Ethan gasped. "Does my mom know?" "Nope," I said, winking. "And we're going to keep it a surprise for now." They practically vibrated with excitement. The idea that their workaholic aunt had a life more glamorous than anything their parents had imagined? It was blowing their little minds. And I wasn't done yet. One evening, I took the kids to the penthouse's infinity pool. As the city lights twinkled around us, Olivia leaned against the glass railing, looking out over the skyline. Then she gasped. "Aunt Emily," she whispered. "I can see our house from here." I walked up beside her, following her gaze. Sure enough, Jessica's house, her precious suburban palace, looked small from this height. Insignificant. Ethan squinted. "It looks tiny from up here." I smiled. Perspective is funny, isn't it? The kids were silent for a moment, taking it all in. Then Olivia turned to me, eyes shining. "Aunt Emily?" "Yeah." She grinned. "I love your castle." I tousled her hair. "Me too, kiddo." Jessica thought she had won when she left me behind. She had no idea that when she came back, she wouldn't just be walking into her house. She'd be walking into my world. The days passed in a blur of luxury. Olivia and Ethan were fully immersed in a world their parents never even considered exposing them to. They weren't just having fun, they were learning. I caught Olivia watching me one morning as I handled a call with a high-profile client, seamlessly closing a multimillion-dollar deal while sipping coffee on the terrace. When I hung up, she tilted her head. "Aunt Emily?" "Yeah. Is this what you do? Just talk to people and make money?" I smiled. "Something like that." She frowned. "Mom always says work is stressful and takes up too much time." I leaned back. "Work can be stressful if you don't love what you do. But when you love it, when you're great at it, it gives you freedom." She seemed to be processing that, and I could almost see the shift happening. The slow realization that her mother had painted a very specific picture of life, and that it wasn't the only version. And I wasn't done shaping that new perspective. Throughout their trip, I kept Jessica convinced that her children were safely tucked away in my tiny apartment, eating homemade mac and cheese and watching cartoons. I even had Ethan send her a voice note one night. "Night, Mommy. We played all day and Aunt Emily made us grilled cheese. Love you." That grilled cheese? Wagyu beef panini with imported Gruyere. Served poolside. Every update I sent her was carefully crafted to be technically true, but strategically vague. Meanwhile, the real setup was happening behind the scenes. David and I weren't just staying at the penthouse temporarily. This was our home now. While Jessica was busy posting family bonding photos from the cruise, I was finalizing high-end interior design plans, ensuring everything was ready for our new life. The cherry on top? I had arranged for my old apartment to be emptied out while she was away. By the time she returned, there wouldn't even be a tiny apartment for her to picture me in anymore. A few days before their return, Jessica sent me a message. "Hey, we're landing on Sunday afternoon. Can't wait to see the kids. They must be dying to come home." I smirked at the irony. They weren't dying to go home. If anything, they were already asking if they could stay with me longer. I sent back a casual reply. "Great. I'll take care of everything. Can't wait to see you." And with that, the final pieces of my plan clicked into place. Jessica and Michael had left thinking they were putting me in my place. They had no idea that when they came back, they wouldn't recognize the world they left behind. Sunday afternoon arrived and Jessica's family landed back home, exhausted but glowing with post-vacation smugness. The moment they stepped off the plane, they were greeted by an unexpected sight. A uniformed chauffeur standing beside a sleek black Rolls-Royce. Michael furrowed his brows. Are we in the wrong pickup area?" Jessica glanced around, confused. "I told Emily we'd just take an Uber." Before they could process anything, the chauffeur stepped forward with a polite nod. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, welcome back. Your transportation has been arranged." Jessica blinked. "Arranged by who?" The chauffeur smiled. "Miss Emily." I imagine her face twisted into that half-smile, half-scowl she always got when something didn't go according to her plan. "Wait," she said slowly. "Emily sent a Rolls-Royce?" Michael let out an awkward laugh. "She must have rented it to mess with us." But the chauffeur was already opening the door. "If you'll follow me." Jessica hesitated, then let out a small scoff. "Fine. Whatever. Let's just get home." They slid into the plush leather seats, still thinking their world was intact. They had no idea what was coming. As the car weaved through the city, Jessica started to fidget. Michael was scrolling through his phone, but she was watching the streets carefully. "This isn't the way home," she murmured. The chauffeur remained perfectly professional. "Miss Emily has arranged for your reunion at a different location." Jessica stiffened. "What?" "Don't worry," he assured her. "Your children are waiting." That was enough to silence her for now. But when they turned onto the private road leading to the city's most prestigious high-rise, she sat bolt upright. "Michael," she hissed, gripping his arm. "Why are we going downtown?" Michael frowned. "I don't know, but this place looks expensive." Jessica's nervousness deepened. She knew the kind of people who lived in this area, CEOs, celebrities, people who mattered. Not people like her. And yet, here they were. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the building's entrance, where a sharply dressed concierge was already waiting. He opened the door with a welcoming smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, welcome to the summit." Jessica's jaw nearly unhinged. She barely managed to step out of the car before turning to the chauffeur. "Where exactly are we?" Before he could answer, another voice called out. "Mom! Dad!" Jessica whipped around. There, standing in the grand marble lobby, were Olivia and Ethan, both dressed in stylish new outfits, looking happier than she had ever seen them. And behind them? Me, standing tall, dressed in an elegant white jumpsuit, holding a glass of champagne like I owned the damn world. Because I did. Jessica's eyes darted between me, the kids, and the massive crystal chandelier above us. "What is going on?" I smiled. "Welcome home, Jess." Her confusion deepened. "This isn't home." Olivia, grinning ear to ear, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, it is home. This is Aunt Emily's castle." Jessica's face paled. I gestured toward the private elevator. Shall we? Still stunned, she followed me inside. The doors slid shut with a soft ding, and the elevator ascended smoothly. Then, as we reached the penthouse, the doors opened, and Jessica's entire world shifted. Jessica stepped into the penthouse, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. She barely made it 2 steps before freezing in place. The living room was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline. An infinity pool shimmered on the terrace, and the entire space radiated a level of luxury she had only ever seen in magazines. And then she saw them. Olivia and Ethan were already inside, giggling as they splashed in the infinity pool, completely at ease like they had been living here forever. Jessica's breath hitched. What is this? I leaned against the sleek bar, sipping my champagne with a satisfied smile. Welcome to my home. Jessica turned sharply. Your home? I took my time answering, savoring the moment. Yes, my home. Her face twisted in confusion. But you live in that tiny apartment. Not anymore, I said smoothly. David and I decided it was time for an upgrade. That was when David stepped forward, looking effortlessly powerful in his tailored suit. He slipped an arm around my waist, nodding politely at Jessica and Michael. Nice to finally meet you, he said casually, like this was just another business introduction. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Michael, on the other hand, looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Wait, you're David? David smirked. I suppose Jessica never mentioned me. Jessica turned to me, eyes burning. You're engaged. I flashed my diamond ring, letting it sparkle under the chandelier's glow. Surprise. She looked like she might faint. Jessica turned, her gaze darting wildly around the penthouse. This is insane. This place, this view, this is... Ethan cut her off excitedly. Mom, come look. You can see our house from here. Jessica turned toward the glass wall and followed his little pointing finger. Sure enough, from this height, her beloved suburban home looked tiny, insignificant. Her face drained of color. I stepped beside her, lowering my voice just enough for only her to hear. You thought I was beneath you, I murmured. That I was just some workaholic with nothing but an empty apartment. But while you were so busy judging me, I built this. She swallowed hard. Emily, I didn't. I tilted my head. Didn't what? Didn't think I was capable of having a life of my own? Didn't think I could be happy? Didn't consider me important enough to invite on your precious cruise? She flinched. I smiled sweetly. But it's okay, Jessica. I made good use of my time. I babysat. I bonded with Olivia and Ethan. And I made sure they had fun. Jessica looked over at the kids, who were now chatting animatedly with David, completely at ease with their new uncle. She had lost control. For the first time, Jessica realized she wasn't the center of the universe. And it was killing her. Jessica turned to me, her face a mess of emotions. Shock, anger, embarrassment. But beneath all of that, I saw something else. Insecurity. Emily. She started, her voice tight. This is insane. You were supposed to be watching the kids, not... She waved her hands wildly. Whatever this is. I tilted my head. Oh, I did watch them. And they had the time of their lives. Michael, still looking dazed, finally spoke. Okay. But seriously, what the hell is going on? You bought a penthouse? And you're engaged to a tech CEO. David smirked, slipping his hands into his pockets. I know. Shocking, right? Jessica shot him a glare before turning back to me. Why didn't you tell us? I arched a brow. Why would I? So you could pretend to care for 5 minutes before going back to talking about how hard it is to be a stay-at-home mom. Her nostrils flared. That's not. Save it, Jess. I exhaled, finally letting go of the restraint I'd been holding onto for years. You've never respected my choices. Not once. Every single family gathering. I'm just the too busy sister. The one who doesn't understand real life. I gestured around the penthouse. But guess what? This is real life. My life. And while you were so busy looking down on me, I was building something incredible. Jessica swallowed, shifting uncomfortably. I took a step closer. And the best part? You handed me this opportunity. You excluded me. You gave me time with Olivia and Ethan. And in those 2 weeks, they saw something they've never seen before. Jessica stiffened. And what's that supposed to mean? Olivia, completely oblivious to the tension, ran up to her mom and tugged on her sleeve. Mom! Aunt Emily loves her job. And she still has so much fun. Ethan nodded eagerly. Yeah. She works and she has a castle. And Uncle David is super cool. And they do whatever they want. Jessica's face was frozen, her carefully curated worldview crumbling. She had spent years preaching that her way, marriage, kids, and domestic life, was the only real path, that I was somehow less because I chose ambition. And now? Her own kids were looking at me with wide, admiring eyes. Jessica's hands clenched at her sides. This is ridiculous. You're filling their heads with nonsense. Real life isn't about penthouses and fancy cars, Emily. I leaned in slightly. No, Jessica. Your life isn't. But mine is. Her lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't a competition. Isn't it? I gave her a knowing smile. Because you made it one a long time ago. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then, unexpectedly, our mother finally spoke. Jessica, Linda said softly. Jessica turned sharply. Mom, you're not seriously. I think it's time we admit something, Linda interrupted, looking directly at me for the first time that night. We've been unfair to Emily. Jessica's eyes widened. What? Linda sighed. She's worked so hard. And we've never really given her the respect she deserves. She looked around the penthouse, then back at me, her expression unreadable. I didn't realize how much we were pushing you away. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My mother had never admitted fault before. Jessica's face twisted. So what, now Emily's the favorite? Dad, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. Jessica, that's not the point. He let out a breath. Emily made something huge of herself, and we barely acknowledged it. That's on us. Jessica looked like she wanted to argue, but she was outnumbered. And deep down, I think she knew they were right. I could see it, the shift in Jessica's posture, the way her shoulders sagged just slightly. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one trying to prove myself. She was. Her entire identity had been built around the idea that she had done things the right way. That I was the one who would end up alone, regretful. But now? She was the one standing in my penthouse, struggling to justify her life choices. She turned away from me, looking at Olivia and Ethan, then back out at the city skyline. Finally she spoke, quieter this time. I never wanted to make you feel small, Emily. I watched her carefully. Maybe not intentionally. But that doesn't change the fact that you did. Jessica sighed, rubbing her temples. I guess. I just never saw things from your side. I nodded. No. You didn't. Another long silence stretched between us. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was something else. Something unfinished. But maybe, just maybe, something fixable. 1 year later, the family gathered again. But this time at my penthouse. The infinity pool sparkled under the afternoon sun. Laughter filled the air. And the scent of freshly grilled food drifted from the terrace. But the biggest difference? The energy. It wasn't strained. It wasn't competitive. It wasn't a performance where Jessica was the star, and I was the side act. Felt real. Jessica sat by the pool, watching Olivia unwrap her birthday presents with a genuine smile. A year ago, she would have made a passive-aggressive comment about me buying their love with expensive gifts. Today, she leaned over and said, Emily, I think you won Aunt of the Year with that one. I smirked. What can I say? I have excellent taste. She chuckled, shaking her head. But this time there was no bitterness. Just acceptance. I didn't need to win anymore. Because I already had everything I wanted. Jessica had changed in other ways too. So night school? I asked, raising a brow as she sipped her iced tea. She exhaled. Yeah. Counseling certification. I figured if I was going to give people advice about their lives, I should probably know what I'm talking about. I nodded, genuinely impressed. That's big for you. She smiled, but there was something softer about it now. I used to think being a stay-at-home mom was my only identity, and that if I admitted I wanted something else, It meant I wasn't grateful. I tilted my head. And now? She glanced at her kids, who were happily chatting with David. Now I think I was just scared. For the first time I saw Jessica as something other than the perfect sister. She wasn't my competition. She was just human. And maybe for the first time she saw me that way too. Mom and Dad were different too. Linda had taken up cooking classes, which was hilarious considering how much she used to hate the kitchen. But now? She was actually enjoying it, and bonding with Olivia and Ethan over making cupcakes. Dad had started gardening on my penthouse terrace, which I initially thought was insane, but now? He loved it. And I loved seeing him happy. Michael, still kind of an idiot. But even he had softened, making an effort to ask me about my work instead of dismissing it. The shift wasn't huge, but it was enough. As the sun began to set, I walked over to Jessica, handing her a sleek envelope. She frowned. "What's this?" I smirked. "An invitation." She opened it, scanning the elegant lettering. "Vice President Promotion Party, hosted by Emily and David." Her eyes widened. "VP? You're the vice president now." I grinned. "Got the offer a few months ago. Thought you might want to come." Jessica looked at the invitation, then at me. A year ago she would have made an excuse. Today? She smiled. I wouldn't miss it. And just like that, the last wall between us fell. The competition was over. Because we weren't rivals anymore. We were family. The night of the party arrived, and my penthouse buzzed with energy. The skyline twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, laughter and conversation filled the air, and a live jazz band played softly in the background. This wasn't just a celebration of my promotion, it was a statement. I had built this. I had created this life. And for the first time my family wasn't standing in the background silently judging. They were part of it. I turned just in time to see Jessica walk in, wearing an elegant navy blue dress that actually suited her for once. Not one of those stiff, ultra-conservative outfits she usually wore to prove she was a proper wife and mother. Michael trailed behind her, looking slightly overwhelmed but supportive nonetheless. Olivia and Ethan ran straight to me. "Aunt Emily, this place is amazing." I laughed, hugging them both. "I'm glad you think so." Jessica reached me holding a champagne flute. "I have to admit, this is impressive." I smirked. "I know." She rolled her eyes but clinked her glass against mine anyway. I took a sip, watching as she surveyed the party, seeing my world with fresh eyes. Then she turned to me and said something I never thought I'd hear. "I'm proud of you." I raised a brow. "Really?" She nodded. "I used to think that because our lives were so different yours was wrong. But I see it now." She exhaled, shaking her head. "You built something incredible, Emily. And you're happy. That's all that really matters." Something loosened in my chest. This wasn't just an acknowledgement. It was an apology. I smiled, deciding to meet her halfway. "You know, I admire you too. Not for the reasons Mom always listed, but because you're actually working on yourself now." Jessica's lips twitched. "Wow. A compliment? From you?" I laughed. "Don't get used to it." She chuckled, shaking her head. But for the first time the teasing wasn't sharp. It was comfortable. As the night went on, I watched my family interact in a way they never had before. Mom and Dad mingled with my colleagues, actually engaging in conversations about my work instead of dismissing it. Michael, for once, wasn't making snide comments about my fancy life. Instead, he was stuffing his face with gourmet hors d'oeuvres like a kid in a candy store. And Jessica? She wasn't trying to outshine me. She was just here. With me. It was nice. Not perfect. But real. Later that night, as I stood on the penthouse terrace overlooking the city, David wrapped an arm around my waist. "Not bad, huh?" he murmured. I sighed, leaning into him. "Not bad at all." He chuckled. "So what's next?" I smiled, watching as Olivia and Ethan played by the pool, their laughter ringing through the air. "Who knows?" I said softly. "But for the first time I think we're all finally moving forward." David kissed my temple. "And you? Are you happy?" I turned to him, my heart full. I've never been happier. And for the first time I meant it.